And with Sabra Lane after the news at 7 o'clock. The Qantas questions linger with the board under pressure to explain what it knew about the problems facing the airline. Then after 7:30, I'll be joined by the Deputy Opposition Leader Susan Lee. You'll also hear from Saul Griffiths, the man who designed America's Inflation Reduction Act. He's here in Australia with a few ideas about what we might be able to do to attract investment and capital. It's news time here on RN Breakfast, 7 o'clock.
Good morning, Sarah Hall with ABC News. The death toll from last week's Morocco earthquake is expected to rise as rescuers move closer towards the epicentre. Middle East correspondent Alison Horn reports from the High Atlas Mountains in central Morocco.
The villages of the High Atlas Mountains bore the brunt of the earthquake, and rescue efforts are only just starting to trickle in, racing against the clock to find survivors. More than 2,000 people have been killed and thousands more are now homeless. On the sides of main roads, bamboo shelters are being built to house displaced families who have little access to food, water and sanitation. Alison Horn, ABC News in the High Atlas Mountains.
Suspended Spanish Soccer Federation President Luis Rubiales has resigned from his role after widespread criticism for kissing Spain forward Jenny Hermoso following the Women's World Cup final. Hermoso said the kiss during the presentation ceremony in Sydney was not consensual and filed a legal complaint last week. Mr Rubiales says he submitted his resignation to the Federation's acting president. Police say a stolen hire car was used in a suspected abduction and stabbing involving a group of teenagers from Melbourne's inner north. More from Nicholas Hines.
Police were tracking the stolen car through Northcote and Preston last night when a man was let out of the vehicle. He'd suffered facial injuries and was taken to hospital. The car was eventually stopped in Preston, where police seized several weapons and arrested a 16-year-old girl from Heidelberg Heights, a 17-year-old Ivanhoe boy, and an 18-year-old woman and 20-year-old man from Preston. He's been charged with theft of a motor car, while the 17 and 18-year-olds remain in police custody. It's the second alleged abduction involving teens in a week after two teenagers were charged over the alleged abduction of a 14-year-old boy last Monday.
Parts of Sydney are this morning blanketed in smoke, with warnings it could continue until midweek. Sarah Hawke with more.
The smoke is from hazard reduction burns, the largest being at Holsworthy in the southwest. There's also a burn in the Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park in the north. Ben Shepherd from the Royal Fire Service says fuel loads need to be reduced.
Now, these areas that didn't burn during the 2019-20 season, these burns will directly protect hundreds, if not thousands, of homes.
The smoke has resulted in very poor air quality in Sydney's east, with Randwick the worst affected of the suburbs. The air quality is poor across the northwest. More burning is scheduled for today.
Queensland's Premier is likely to be questioned about her political future and the timing of her 2-week holiday when she returns to work today. Here's state political reporter Rachel Rieger.
Anastasia Palaszczuk has been on 2 weeks' leave, including a trip to southern Italy where she was tracked down by media and photographed. In her absence, ministerial colleagues have been dismissing speculation about the future of her leadership, which was sparked by rumblings of internal dissatisfaction from Labor colleagues. The chatter came after a politically bruising week, which saw hundreds of people marching on state parliament to demand better support for victims of crime and tougher action on youth crime. On the same day, controversial watch house laws were rushed through parliament. Ms Palaszczuk is expected to address the media today before parliament resumes tomorrow.
The South Australian Premier says the main focus of his visit to China later this week will be to advocate for a relaxing of Chinese taxes on wine and seafood imports from Australia. Last month, China dropped its 80% tariffs on Australian barley after a long-running dispute between the two countries that began in 2020. Peter Malinauskas says China is the state's key trading partner, and he hopes his visit can go some way towards providing relief for local producers affected by the tariffs.
Top of mind is doing what we can as a state government to lubricate the wheels of movement towards relaxations, particularly on tariffs on aquaculture and viticulture or wine. That's our priority. I'm not naive enough to suggest that this trip on its own solves that problem.
Police are still searching for two men wanted over the fatal shooting of Melbourne underworld figure Gavin Preston in a brazen daytime attack on the weekend. 50-year-old Preston was shot dead as he sat outside a cafe in Keilor East on Saturday morning, with nearby diners diving for cover. You're listening to the latest ABC News. Emergency crews remain on alert despite two bushfires in southern Queensland being downgraded overnight. More from David Chen.
The bushfires at Tara and Dunmore were downgraded to advice level yesterday. Residents are being urged to remain vigilant, with the bushfire at Tara expected to continue to burn for several days. The Queensland Rural Fire Service says the fire in the Dunmore and Cumberella State Forests is likely to continue burning for several weeks. Superintendent Wayne Walters-Buell says residents need to remain alert after the bushfire at Tara was sparked by a lawnmower.
Over the weekend there was about 5 fires, small, all started from machinery.
Conditions are expected to ease this week, with a moderate fire danger forecast for most of southern Queensland.
Authorities warn WA's looming bushfire season will be hotter, drier and start earlier than usual. The Department of Fire and Emergency Services says an expected warm and dry spring season will lead to a difficult summer. The community is being urged to start preparing bushfire plans. Australians are grappling with the issues behind a yes or no vote as next month's historic Voice referendum approaches. Voice correspondent Dan Borsha has been travelling the country with Four Corners to understand what Australia's First Nations people think.
Gunai Kurnai and Watchabalak man Ben Abadangelo believes the question being asked in next month's vote is a mediocre response to what he describes as 235 years of brutal subjugation.
Well, it's born out of what's acceptable for constitutional conservatives. It's not born out of black ambition.
The writer and journalist says Indigenous Australians don't have time to accept what he says is a piecemeal reform.
You can watch the Four Corners episode Muddy Waters on ABC TV at 8:30 tonight or on iView. The 4-day working week is becoming part of an increasing number of union-brokered negotiations with employers, suggesting the concept is spreading. More from Daniel Ziffer.
The Australian Services Union says it has signed 2 agreements that include a trial and has 5 to 10 more under negotiation. The deal suggests the concept will soon shift to larger workforces through unions that bargain on behalf of staff, something foreseen by 4-Day Week Australia campaign co-director Adrian McMahon.
This is a workplace improvement that is for all sectors, for all workers, not just those based in offices and not just small, agile businesses.
A Senate report recently called for government agencies to try the concept.
Advocates are urging the New South Wales government to set up a pill testing trial before the summer festival season to help reduce drug-related harm. In an open letter to Premier Chris Minns, more than a dozen experts and advocates say heat is known to increase the risk of taking unknown substances. Unharm CEO Dr Will Tregoning says New South Wales must follow the lead of other jurisdictions which have implemented similar measures.
It's a service that's been delivered for over a year now by the CanTest Consortium in the ACT. So these are effective, simple, proven ways that we can make people safer this summer.
In sport, men's tennis world number 2 Novak Djokovic has the early advantage over Daniil Medvedev in the US Open final. The Serbian has broken serve twice in the first set and leads 5 games to love. Now with more sport, here's Daniela Intilli.
The Newcastle Knights NRL Premiership hopes are alive after a 30 points to 28 extra time win over Canberra in their elimination final at Hunter Stadium. Kalen Ponga's 89th minute penalty goal secured the win for the Knights. Newcastle 5'8" Tyson Gamble has told ABC Sport his teammates improved after a slow start.
Canberra were unreal tonight, but credit to our team, we stuck to our guns.
Newcastle will play the Warriors in a sudden death semi-final in Auckland next weekend. In the NRLW, the Titans defeated Parramatta 34 points to 12 on the Gold Coast. Reigning AFLW premiers Melbourne have moved to second place on the ladder after thrashing the Giants by 77 points. North Melbourne is on top of the table with a 60-point thumping of Carlton, while Essendon beat St Kilda by 12 points. Reigning champion South Africa has begun its Rugby World Cup title defence with an 18-3 win over Scotland. Japan opened its campaign with a 42-12 win over Chile. Germany has won the FIBA Basketball World Cup, beating Serbia 83-77 in the final in the Philippines. And Portuguese cyclist Rui Costa has won stage 15 of the Vuelta in Spain. American Sepp Kuss retains the overall leader's red jersey.
Briefly in finance, the local share market is expected to open flat based on the ASX SPI 200 futures trading. The Aussie dollar this morning, 63.8 US cents. You're up to date with ABC News.
Across Australia, you're listening to RN Breakfast.
Good morning. Welcome to AM. I'm Sabra Lane coming to you.
We're now waiting for the government to see if they request international help. And of course, whatever they need, whatever they want, we will be there.
Yeah, more than 2,100 people are now confirmed dead. The UN's estimating 300,000 people have been affected. We'll head there next. Also today, Russia's foreign minister calls a G20 leaders' declaration of victory after it failed to condemn the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine. And emergency services are battling a large bushfire in the Barkly region in the Northern Territory. Yeah, we'll be keeping a close eye on that as well. Thanks for spending your Monday morning with us.
India's G20 win hides bitter divisions between the West and Global South. News. Al Jazeera. Host India succeeded in getting together a joint Group of 20 declaration, but it hides fractious relationships and bitter divisions among G20 member states. Published on 10 September, 202,310 September 2023, New Delhi. India Prime Minister Narendra Modi may have succeeded in getting together a joint G20 declaration, but the facade of one Earth, one family, one future, the theme of the Group of 20 summit held in the Indian capital, hides fractious relationships and bitter disputes that divide the Global South from the West. Leading up to the two-day summit of the world's wealthiest economies that concluded on Sunday, India projected itself as the champion of the developing nations amid divisions over issues ranging from the Ukraine war to climate change and global food and energy security. In his opening comments, French President Emmanuel Macron said it had become too easy for some developing nations to say that work on climate change is only the responsibility of the West. I am concerned by this rising state of mind, he said, referring to the demands that Western nations should take more responsibility for emissions. Macron's comments reflect some of the behind-the-scenes tensions that have taken place in recent weeks as host India and other countries have raced to see if they could get a joint declaration necessary for the summit to be deemed a success. Climate was one of the critical areas, with some sticking points being the phasing down of all fossil fuels, the increase of renewable energy targets, and the reduction of emissions by 43% globally by 2030 from 2019 levels. Many of the emerging countries were resisting language on all those points. Indian representatives berated their Western counterparts for being responsible for the state of the planet's pollution and expecting nations in the Global South to rein in their fossil fuel use, even though they need that to create growth. This debate divided the room. European nations got the brunt of the criticism as India remained respectful with the United States and Russia, people familiar with the matter told Al Jazeera, but it was ultimately India's representatives who also managed to move the needle on the debate. New Delhi cited its own commitment to renewable energy and managed to include language in the final declaration that would triple renewable capacity globally. And while the declaration also said that global greenhouse gas emissions need to be reduced to 43% by 2030 relative to the 2019 levels, it failed to include language on fossil fuel phase-out. That's really the compromise, said one of the people familiar with the matter. Everyone can claim to be active on climate change, but have their respective red lines. Sign up for Al Jazeera, Week in the Middle East. One of the other areas of tense discussions, and another sore point between the global south and the west, was the conversation around the role of multilateral development banks and their role in today's world. That was so painful, said one of the sources familiar with the matter, noting that everyone had different views on what these institutions should be, as they all aired their grievances. The biggest point for the outside world was the language on the war in Ukraine. The final declaration said that all states should refrain from the threat or use of force to seek territorial acquisition against the territorial integrity and sovereignty or political independence of any state. There was no explicit reference to Russian aggression, unlike in the G20 statement in Bali last year that cited a United Nations resolution condemning in the strongest terms the aggression by the Russian Federation against Ukraine. The language on the war had been left to the very end, said one of the persons cited above, as New Delhi took a big gamble and worked to hammer out consensus on the other areas first. The statement also left out deliberations from invited G20 member nations and global institutions to prepare the final communiqué, a big difference from the Bali summit, which had kept them in until almost the very end. India and its northern neighbor China were not on the same page on several issues, including the reduction of emissions and the language on the Ukraine war. They followed Russia on everything if Russia recommended deletion of this or that they supported it. I don't know if it was planned, the source said, but ultimately Indian negotiators did manage to pull together a final declaration. No matter how many points from the wish list it may have had to leave it out. Modi, who hogged the limelight during the two-day summit, will no doubt tout these wins in India's upcoming state and national elections. And Modi, not done yet, is now planning another international platform. In his closing speech on Sunday, the Indian Prime Minister proposed hosting a virtual summit in November before passing the G20 baton to Brazil.
You can't just not do business with China because China is such an important part of the global economy. And that you see the real differences of opinion among the US's allies on how to deal with China.
Well, you mentioned that
Al Jazeera Podcast.
The G20 Leaders Summit kicks off on Saturday in the Indian capital of New Delhi.
We'll be here, but the Indian
The Delhi Declaration adopted with 100% consensus on day one of India's G20, a major breakthrough for India at the G20, making the India presidency historic. On the Ukraine war, Russia is not mentioned, but the use of force for territorial gain slammed by the G20 countries. Meanwhile, the digital public infrastructure has been integrated into the financial inclusion plan. And India's G20 Sherpa, Mr. Amitabh Kant, speaks exclusively to NDTV after the adoption of the New Delhi Declaration. He calls it a historic and a path-breaking declaration, says that we forced countries to follow the UN principles and drew red lines for each country. Kant says that it took 200 hours of non-stop negotiations on Ukraine to make the declaration possible. US President Joe Biden tweets about a major development during the G20, a new economic corridor for India, the Middle East and Europe. He calls it a game-changing regional investment. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his wife Akshata Murthy visited Delhi's Akshardham temple early this morning. The temple visit comes after Sunak has repeatedly expressed his pride over his Hindu roots. Bad news from Morocco. Over 2,000 people killed in Morocco's deadliest earthquake in decades. The race to find survivors continues. Unfortunately, the death toll expected to rise.
Today is the day of pleasantries. It is a day of goodbyes, as leaders will be part of the ceremonial exercise which is happening at Rajghat. They are paying tribute to the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. Prime Minister Narendra Modi welcomed all of them, and the leaders will also sign on the peace wall at the Leaders' Lounge. They'll be paying tributes to Mahatma Gandhi, as I just said. It becomes interesting because the operative or the key issues and the big takeaways of the summit is done. Now it is about this imagery. Vasudha is joining me live. So, Vasudha, lots of details also coming in with regards to who will be planting which tree sapling. What do we know about it?
So, right now, Maria, of course, this is technically day 2 of the G20 presidency of India. The critical part of it, like you said, is already over. And India, of course, has scripted a diplomatic history, not just navigating the Ukraine-Russia language formulation crisis that, leaders were facing, but also bringing about some very key outcomes when it comes to increasing female labor force participation or making DPI, a very important part of financial inclusion plan of G20 presidency, and of course reforms in multilateral developmental banks. All of these things happened yesterday, and most importantly the African Union's inclusion in the G20 presidency. So it's quite emotive and a poignant moment also for the leaders to visit Rajghat today, because every time India spoke about African Union's inclusion in the G20, Prime Minister Narendra Modi did talk about Mahatma Gandhi's sacrifices and his struggle that began in the African continent, and of course his association with Nelson Mandela and all those things. So this is quite an emotive thing. And of course, India's theme has always been of inclusion, action-oriented G20. So something that has happened yesterday is basically India walking the talk. So that history has been scripted, the diplomatic milestone has been achieved, and today is a lot about basically thinking about a lot of things that have happened, and of course the forward-looking plans that have been put in place. Today is going to also be a day of logistics, because all the leaders will have to go back, right? So those things India will have to take care of today. Bharat Mandapam is, now from 8 to 12 o'clock, all these Rajghat meetings will take place. Then all the leaders will come back to Bharat Mandapam to hold the third critical sort of meeting of the day. But all the operative issues have been discussed. This is with regard to future. There are some bilateral meetings and pull-aside meetings that India wishes to do. That is what we know for now. So some bilateral meetings with some countries are yet to happen. We are told that they could happen today. After that, of course, there is also a tree planting and photo opportunity that has been decided. There is a huge section in the South Plaza that has been dedicated to this. We don't have the details of the saplings, plantations as yet, but I'll get them for you soon. But there seems to be a lot of buzz over this particular activity. Yesterday's dinner, of course, saw a lot of gala sort of cultural programs and gatherings of sorts, and it was a celebration of the world coming together to find collective solutions to shared problems, and that I think meant a lot for all the G20 members.
On the final day of the G20 summit in New Delhi, heads of state gathered to pay their respects to Mahatma Gandhi, a leading figure in the fight for India's independence. US President Joe Biden left afterwards for meetings in Vietnam, skipping the third session. A leader's declaration was reached on Saturday, with officials saying negotiations continued until the last minute. The document stopped short of criticizing Russia's invasion of Ukraine, something Moscow praised as balanced.
Yes, the Ukrainian crisis is mentioned, but exclusively in the context of the need to resolve all conflicts that exist in the world.
Kiev, however, said the document was nothing to be proud of, and aid agency Oxfam described it as underwhelming in its response to urgent issues such as climate change and inequality. Others commended the group's spirit of compromise, but hoped words would be followed by concrete actions.
We need to see more will and more action from the greatest emitters, because those who are suffering increasingly.
Heavy rain fell on the Indian capital as the summit came to a close. Many here are relieved the intense security that's paralyzed parts of the city is coming to an end. The government was criticized for covering up scenes of poverty in New Delhi, but analysts say Indian culture and Indian leadership were highlighted this weekend.
There is no doubt in the mind of thoughtful Indians, people who matter, that India is very much a leader on the international stage.
According to Indian media, this year's G20 was a win for Prime Minister Narendra Modi and a boost to his image as a global statesman. The leader is capitalizing on the forum ahead of next year's general election. His message: he has transformed the nation into a major political player for both the developing and developed worlds. The forum ended with Modi passing on the G20 gavel to the leader of the host nation in 2024, Brazilian President Lula da Silva. Katrina Yu, Al Jazeera, New Delhi.
Growing numbers of Palestinians living in Lebanon.
SBS live streams and podcasts are supported by advertising.
What is it really like to start calling Australia home? Find out with this podcast from SBS Audio.
My First Year on Aussie Soil looks at how new migrants found their feet in Australia, their highs, lows, and hilarious first impressions.
Or on New Home, hear from migrant and refugee women who are quietly building new lives in regional Australia.
Find New Home and My First Year on Aussie Soil on the SBS Audio app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to SBS News.
Several thousand protesters supporting the Israeli government's judicial overhaul rallied in front of the Supreme Court in Jerusalem after nearly 9 months of protests in opposition to the proposed reforms. It comes before a pivotal hearing next week on the legality of the first major bill of the overhaul. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition bill, which passed in July, bans the Supreme Court from preventing government decisions it deems unreasonable. Protesters expressed hostility towards what they describe as the elite class, many flourishing signs with the words, "End the judicial dictatorship" and "The elites are taking control." One unidentified protester spoke to these concerns.
What you can see here is a demonstration for basic, reform in the justice system. It's in order just to bring democracy according to definition and not according to the leftist elites.
Much unlike those who have been protesting against the proposed reforms for months, protester Charlie Saakashvili believes the Bagatz, or Supreme Court's powers, threaten Israel's democracy.
This is the demonstration, and
we are coming here to send a message not only to Bagatz, also to our leaders, that Bagatz doesn't have the authority to break down the basic rules that our parliament made. Because if Bagatz breaks down our basic rules, it means that the Bagatz is a dictator.
This is in complete opposition to the concerns expressed by protesters for nearly 9 months, the largest grassroots protest in Israel's history. Those opposed to the judicial overhaul are against what they describe as a quashing of Supreme Court checks and balances on the government. They fear it further encroaches on Israel's democracy, which hosts a single parliamentary chamber, a largely ceremonial presidency, and no constitution. They add it will open the door to corruption because it makes it easier for government as a whole, or individual ministers, to hire and fire officials for potentially the wrong reasons. These are the words of protester Nurit Perry just days ago, echoing the same concerns of democratic decline as pro-government protesters, but in response to an overhaul of the judiciary.
I'm here to tell everyone how scared I am that Israel will become a dictatorship instead of democracy. I was born here, I love this country, and I'm really afraid that the changes they want to do will destroy the country.
For protester Evan Tavosh, such protesters have been given too much space to voice their opposition.
I'm here because we had enough of one side only demonstrating, talking, expressing views which are completely not representing the major part of the Israeli society. And it's about time that silent majority will also raise its voice.
It's clear the government's plan has sown divisions among the Israeli public and even within the military, long viewed as apolitical, with concerns about war readiness raised on both sides of the debate. In August, Israel's Supreme Court began hearing the first in a series of appeals linked to a judicial overhaul undertaken by the coalition, which has set off an unprecedented domestic crisis. If the justices oppose the law, Israel could confront a constitutional crisis. Katrina Stirrett, SBS News.
Why do people want... SBS is Australia's most trusted multilingual broadcaster. Our listeners are loyal, highly engaged and have supported countless
War on the 4th of August.
.au.
You're listening to SBS News.
When Britain and Germany went to war on the 4th of August 1914, Australia's Prime Minister at the time, Joseph Cook, and opposition leader Andrew Fisher pledged full support for Britain. The first engagements were in the Pacific and, of course, Gallipoli in 1915. It was the following year, in 1916, that Australians fought on the Western Front in Europe, where losses were heavy and gains were few. Nearly 417,000 men enlisted. 60,000 of them never came home. In July 1916, Australian troops were introduced to machine gun warfare at Fromelles in northern France, where they suffered 5,533 casualties in just 24 hours. By the end of the year, about 40,000 Australians had been killed or wounded on the Western Front. In 1917, a further 76,836 Australians became casualties in battles such as Bullecourt, Messines, and the 4-month campaign around Ypres, known as the Battle of Passchendaele. And it's there, at the Meningate Memorial, where the names of 54,000 soldiers who were never found in the chaos war spawned are engraved on its walls in remembrance. Matthias Diependale is the Heritage Minister of Northern Belgium's region of Flanders.
You should know that every evening of every single day since the 1920s, there has been a couple of people blowing a horn outside the Manning Gate. That's every evening, almost 100 years that they've been doing that. That's the idea of commemorating every individual lost life in that war. And that's the strength of this dossier. That's what we want to do. We want to point out that war is losing or makes you lose individual lives, persons who has families, who have a social life. And that's the loss that we want to point out.
At the Tyne Cot Cemetery, also near Passchendaele, 12,000 Commonwealth soldiers are buried row upon row. With the war in Ukraine ravaging Europe's heartland again, the sites have a new relevance, says Erin Harris, who's a guide at Tyne Cot. It's the largest cemetery for Commonwealth forces in the world for any war.
I think it's so easy to make that link, and we get so many people coming through here and making that link with Ukraine just because it is so relevant at the moment. And you're seeing, the same situation happening with these two sides fighting and, endlessly. And you come here to a place like this and you really see, well, this is still happening. This is still going on in the world.
Visitor Christophe De Neyer from the Netherlands also makes a link between the past and the present conflicts.
Het jonge volk praat heel veel over oorlog en hetgeen dat in Oekraïne.
Well, the youngsters talk a great deal about war and what is happening in Ukraine and Russia. And it's important to make sure that we don't forget about World War I and all the events too. Even if it is a 1.5 hour drive, it is good that they see this and can ponder all this, because just talk is easy.
Over babbelen is veel, maar ja.
Now both France and Belgium want UNESCO to include the area on its famed list of World Heritage Sites alongside the Great Barrier Reef, the Great Wall of China and Peru's Machu Picchu. They argue that the area of 139 sites has been living history almost since the guns finally fell silent in 1918. Matthias Diependale again.
It is here that we also started with a new kind of remembrance, a new kind of looking back on those conflicts. And that's actually something that we want to spread around the world. That is the idea of the fact that you have individual lives lost and you have to remember every individual life in its particularity. And that's something that we want to give back to the world as, of course, a dam against new conflicts.
But UNESCO has already ruled that's not necessarily enough to achieve recognition. To the dismay of the two nations, UNESCO snubbed the request in 2018 with the advice of the International Council on Monuments and Sites littering its conclusions with fragments like several questions, lack of clarity, too narrow and limited, and shortcomings. A decision on the issue is expected to be made around September the 21st during UNESCO's World Heritage Committee meeting in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Alan Lee, SBS News.
Prompt injection attacks threaten AI chatbots and other news. World Economic Forum, cybersecurity, cybercrime. Prompt injection attacks threaten AI chatbots and other cybersecurity news to know this month. 8th September 2023, Head of Industry and Partnerships, Center for Cybersecurity, World Economic Forum. This news roundup brings you key cybersecurity stories from the past month. Top cybersecurity news. UK Cybersecurity Agency warns against prompt injection. Attacks on AI. Data breaches continue to climb in 2023. Japan's Cybersecurity Agency suffers breach. Reports suggest. 1. UK Cybersecurity Agency warns against attacks targeting AI chatbots. The UK's National Cybersecurity Centre (NCSC) has highlighted a growing risk of chatbots being manipulated by hackers through prompt injection attacks. This is when a user creates an input that causes a model to behave in an unintended way, such as generating offensive content or revealing confidential information. The current generation of large language models (LLMs) is vulnerable to these types of inputs, which could have worrying consequences, the agency says. As LLMs are increasingly used to pass information to other services and applications, the risk of prompt injection attacks will grow. The NCSC has also announced Thoughtily White House will become its new Chief Technology Officer, to accelerate public-private responses to address the global cybersecurity skills and talent gap. The World Economic Forum Center for Cybersecurity has launched the Bridging the Cyber Skills Gap initiative. The initiative builds on the forum's extensive research on the future of jobs and approaches towards reskilling across sectors. The initiative brings together a multi-stakeholder group comprising industry leaders, government agencies, civil society and academia to create a strategic cybersecurity talent framework and devise actions to help individuals enter and thrive in the cybersecurity workforce. Among other things, the initiative seeks to raise awareness and share knowledge amongst C-suite executives and decision makers about cybersecurity skills deficit and its economic and security Implications define strategic approaches and processes that will help build sustainable cyber talent pipelines within organizations and across sectors and geographies. The forum has also partnered with Salesforce Fortinton The Global Cyber Alliance, delivering free and globally accessible cybersecurity training through the Cybersecurity Learning Hub. This platform aims to democratize access to cybersecurity career paths and has already trained over 1.16 million individuals spread across all continents. World Economic Forum partner ABSA, in collaboration with the Maharishi Institute, have also developed the Cybersecurity Academy that is targeting some of the most disadvantaged groups in South Africa. Read more about your impact. 2. Data breaches continue to soar in 2023. The number of data breaches worldwide saw a 156% increase between Q1 and Q2 2023, according to new figures from VPN provider Surfshark. A total of 110,800,000 accounts were leaked in the second quarter of the year, equivalent to 855 every minute. Almost half of these breaches were of accounts originating in the US, while Russia, Spain, France and Turkey made up the rest of the top 5 most breached countries. The global average cost of a data breach has increased by 15% in the past 3 years. According to a new IBM report, Cost of Data, a breach 2023 reveals that 51% of organizations plan to improve their cybersecurity as a result of a breach. 3. News in brief, top cybersecurity stories this month. Japan's National Cyber Defense Agency has been infiltrated by hackers, who may have had access to information for as much as 9 months. The Financial Times reports. The attack on Japan's National Center of Incident Readiness and Strategy for Cybersecurity began last autumn, with Chinese state-backed hackers thought to be behind it. Basic cyber hygiene still protects against 98% of attacks, Microsoft says. The minimum standards every organization should adopt are requiring phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication, applying zero-trust principles, using up-to-date anti-malware tools, keeping on top of systems and software updates, and protecting data. The bonuses of top company executives are increasingly being tied to cybersecurity metrics. It is part of a trend to make cybersecurity a top-level consideration, with companies including Johnson & Johnson and the London Stock Exchange Group among those tying a portion of bonuses to a cyber goal in 2022. The Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance has detailed how Russian state-sponsored hackers Sandworm are using on Android malware called infamous Chizelto attack. Ukrainian soldiers' devices scan files, monitor traffic and steal sensitive information. Microsoft has identified 7 emerging hybrid warfare trends from Russia's cyber war with Ukraine. These include weaponizing pacifism by amplifying discontent about the war and stoking fears of World War III. Other tactics include demonizing refugees and mobilizing nationalism. 0 seconds of 1 minute, 59 seconds. A cybercrime couple have pleaded guilty to trying to launder $4.50 BN of Bitcoin stolen in a hack in 2016. Heather Morgan and Ilya Lichtenstein were arrested last year, after police traced the funds. Prior to her arrest, Morgan released a series of rap videos under the name Razulkin. 4. More on cybersecurity on agenda. The World Economic Forum's Global Coalition for Digital Safety has produced a foundational language to define online harms. The aim is to create a common language to describe the problems of online harm, so that regulators and tech firms can better work together to address it. Consolidating cybersecurity tools and testing and augmenting resilience measures are among 7 steps companies can take to control their cybersecurity spend, without compromising on its effectiveness. We need to be realistic about the impact of generative AI, Paul Swartz and Francois Candelon of the BCG Henderson Institute argue. Technology's impact on productivity growth has been consistently overstated, they say, and analysts could be repeating that mistake with generative AI.
Japan's cybersecurity agency suffers months-long breach. Financial Times. What is included in my trial? During your trial you will have complete digital access to AFD.com with everything in both of our standard digital and premium digital packages. Standard digital includes access to a wealth of global news, analysis and expert opinion. Premium digital includes access to our premier business column, Lex, as well as 15
Roblox plans PlayStation debut, new world-building AI tools. Reuters. New York, September 8. Reuters gaming company Roblox RBLX. Plans to launch its immersive digital worlds platform on Sony's 6,758 PlayStation devices in October, giving it access to the hundreds of millions of people who use the world's most popular gaming consoles. Roblox will also make its app fully available on Meta's Meta.o Quest mixed reality devices this month after rolling out a test version in July. That version was downloaded more than 1 million times within 5 days, the company said in a blog post. The expansion is part of a plan to make Roblox available anywhere users are trying to use it, including mobile, desktop and augmented and virtual reality AR/VR devices, Roblox Chief Product Officer Manuel Bronstein told Reuters ahead of the company's annual developer conference this week. I wonder if we should be on every TV, Bronstein said. Roblox, with 66 million daily users, most of them teenagers, is one of the most popular gaming services for children, and watched closely by tech giants like Meta as they try to entice the next generation of users. Meta's similar metaverse service Horizon, where users appearing as avatars can gather in virtual spaces, has struggled to gain similar momentum. It had fewer than 200,000 monthly users as of last year, according to a Wall Street Journal report. Horizon is currently available only in VR, although Meta said in February that it was aiming to release web and mobile versions soon, without identifying a date. At its conference, Roblox announced plans to roll out an AI-powered world-building chatbot by the end of the year. Developers will be able to use the chatbot, which closely resembles a tool previewed by Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg last year to generate virtual objects and scenes on command, without coding, according to a demo shown to Reuters. Meta's technology, which it has not yet released, used voice commands rather than written chats. Another new Roblox tool due later this year would make it possible for mobile or desktop users to conduct voice calls with Roblox friends appearing as avatars. The technology, called Connect, uses the device's camera to capture a participant's facial expressions and body movements, and then displays that via the person's avatar. Reporting by Katie Paul, editing by David Gaffin and Josie Cow. Our standards: the Thomson Reuters Trust Principles. where to see it, what to expect and more. Technology. Modified on September 10, 2023 at 19:30 GMT. Lyerlia is an anime series that has generated excitement among fans. This anime has captured the attention of worldwide audiences through its distinctive narrative and vivid visuals. Brought to television by Geek Toys Studios, this captivating show seamlessly blends elements of mystery, psychological thriller and supernatural themes to create a captivating viewing experience. In this article, we'll explore where viewers can watch Lyerlia anime, delve into the captivating storyline, discuss the talented team responsible for the production, and provide insight into what audiences can expect from this exciting series. Everything you need to know about Lyerlia anime, where you can see Lyerlia anime. Fans of the anime have several options for streaming platforms. A popular choice is Crunchyroll, a leading platform dedicated solely to anime and Asian content. An extensive library of anime series, including Lyerlia and Crunchyroll, ensure easy access for a global audience. Additionally, other widely used streaming services, such as Funimation, Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime Video may also broadcast the series. Please note that availability may vary by region. Therefore, you can get the most up-to-date information by checking local streaming platforms. Plot synopsis of Lyerlia anime. The story revolves around Hiroto, a transfer student who unexpectedly defeats the strongest empress and becomes the pseudo-strongest in the school. On Academy Island, all conflicts are resolved through games played for a certain number of stars. The student with the most stars receives the prestigious ranking of 7 stars. As students compete in games in hopes of collecting stars and achieving the coveted 7-star rank, a battle between wits and deception ensues. The cast and the team behind Lyerlia anime. The anime features a talented team of creators, animators and voice actors who expertly bring the story to life. The anime adaptation Lyerlia directed by Naoki Matsuura and Satoru Ono. Momoka Toyota is handling the series scripts, while Yumi Nakamura is handling character design. Aya Abaragi is the color key artist, and Jiwoo Park is the art director. Ryan Chai is serving as the technical director and Keisuke Yanagi is handling the editing. Ryasuke Naya holds the position of sound director. The anime is produced by Geek Toys and Cyber Agent is responsible for the music production. Mayan plays the opening theme Lies Goes On and Smile Princess the closing theme Fakey Merry Game. The main cast consists of Genta Nakamura as Hiroto Shinohara, Yukina Shuto as Shiruki Himei, and Wakana Kuramachi as Sarasu Cienji. The dynamic between the characters is enhanced by the chemistry of the voice actors, who add depth and authenticity to their interactions. This riveting performance adds an intriguing layer to the already intriguing storyline for viewers. Final thoughts. The anime captures the essence of an anime series by seamlessly blending mystery, psychological thrills and supernatural elements. It offers viewers worldwide an immersive and thought-provoking experience. The captivating storyline, visually stunning artwork, and talented production team have earned this series wide acclaim among anime enthusiasts. Fans looking for a captivating series full of deceptions, hidden truths and unexpected twists must watch this anime. This captivating show is conveniently available on popular streaming platforms such as Crunchyroll, making it easy for viewers to immerse themselves in the complex world of Ayumi Suzuki. Sportskeeda anime is now on Twitter. Follow us here for the latest news and updates. Source link. Scientists are bioengineering bacteria to generate electricity from wastewater. In a groundbreaking achievement, scientists have engineered E. coli bacteria, the most commonly studied microbes, to generate electricity from wastewater. This can revolutionize both waste management and energy production. Although there are exotic microbes that naturally produce electricity, they can only do so in the presence of certain chemicals. E. coli can grow on a variety of sources, which allowed us to generate electricity in a variety of environments, including wastewater, said Artemis Bughagen, a professor at EPFL, a public research university in Lausanne, Switzerland, as news agency EONS reported. Through a process known as extracellular electron transfer (EAT), researchers engineered E. coli bacteria to exhibit enhanced EAT, making them highly efficient electric microbes. Unlike previous processes that required specialized chemicals to generate electricity, the bioengineered E. Coal can generate electricity while metabolizing a variety of organic substrates, including wastewater that the researchers collected from a local brewery in Lausanne, Switzerland. The exotic electric microbes couldn't even survive, while our bioengineered electric bacteria were able to thrive exponentially by feeding on this waste. The implications of the study go beyond the treatment of wastewater. The manipulated E. coli can not only generate electricity from a variety of sources, but they can also be used in microbial fuel cells, electrosynthesis and biosensing, among other things. Additionally, the bacterium's genetic flexibility means it can also be adapted to specific environments and raw materials, making it a versatile tool for sustainable technology development. With input from Eons. Read more. Here's why your freezer smells so bad and what you can do about it. Source link. Biohacking news, reviews and information. Engadget. Biohacker Josiah Zayner accused of being an unlicensed practitioner. He says he's under investigation by the California Medical Board. Bayer. England, May 16, 2019. Recommended reading, The Fate of Facebook's Free Internet Project. The best long-form writing on technology and more on the web. Vibe. Steele, May 20, 2018. Recommended reading, Meet the Attorney Who Biohacker Josiah Zayner accused of being an unlicensed practitioner. Noted biohacker Josiah Zayner says he's under investigation for practicing medicine without a license. The former NASA scientist, known on social media for his DIY medical procedures, was sent a letter by the California Department of Consumer Affairs after it received a complaint of unlicensed practice of medicine against Zayner. ASMIT Technology Review highlights. While anyone can file a complaint with California's medical board, the fact it is now investigating means it considers the accusations credible. WTF. I have been accused of practicing medicine without a license because of genetic self-experimentation and showing people how to access publicly available knowledge. The truth is, https://tco/j9yo0rkpr. Josiah Zayner at 4 Love May 14, 2019. Biohackers are individuals that perform medical experiments outside university labs and accredited companies. Zayner found fame online for a raft of stunts, including carrying out a fecal transplant and injecting his own arm with CRISPR. He's also well known for his disdain for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, which he accuses of blocking innovation and putting lives at risk. His company, The Odin, sells a variety of DIY biology tests, including a $209 kit that makes fluorescent yeast. But neither the Odin nor any other biohacker have yet to develop any notable genetic treatments. In a post on social media, Zayner wrote, I have never given anyone anything to inject or use, never sold any material meant to treat a disease, and never claimed to provide treatments or cures because I knew this day would come. He added that he was being unfairly targeted for showing people how to access publicly available knowledge. California's medical board has requested an interview with Zayner on June 11, informing him that he is welcome to bring an attorney, although it's not obligatory. There is a risk, however, since California law makes the practice of medicine without a license a misdemeanor or a felony. Should officials feel that Zayner has broken the law, he could be forced to cough up $10,000 or worse, spend 3 years behind bars. Apple Event Rumor Roundup. What to expect at the Wonderlust iPhone 15 keynote. Apple's latest fall iPhone event Wonderlust is nearly here. 4 new iPhones and a couple of Apple Watch models are expected to take center stage when the company showcases its latest products. USB-C should be in the spotlight as Apple changes its charging ports in response to new regulations. Although nothing is set in stone until Tim Cook takes the stage on Tuesday, we've gathered the most probable leaks and rumors ahead of Apple's September 12th event. iPhone 15 and iPhone 15 Pro. No matter what else Tim Cook and company reveal, new iPhones are practically guaranteed to dominate the day's headlines. We can expect a high-end iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 15 Pro Max, along with a standard iPhone 15 and iPhone 15 Plus. There was an earlier report that Apple may rebrand the Pro Max model as iPhone 15 Ultra this year, but it isn't clear if that's still on the table. First, screen sizes will likely stand pat. That means 6.1-inch displays for the iPhone 15 and 15 Pro and 6.7-inch screens for the iPhone 15 Plus and iPhone 15 Pro Max or Ultra. Promotion: Apple's branding for 120Hz variable refresh rate displays will almost certainly remain exclusive to the top-tier models. A change many foresee is Lightning cables becoming obsolete. Over a decade has passed since the switching from 30-pin connectors to Lightning, and European regulations are forcing Apple to swap ports again, this time to USB. Obviously, we'll have to comply with the EU's requirements, Apple VP Greg Josvia confirmed in an interview with Thursday last year. Although Apple could wait for next year's iPhone launch to make the EU's deadline, leaks and well-sourced insiders indicate most unanimously that this year's iPhone 15 will be the one to kick off the USB iPhone era. However, connected Apple analyst Ming-Chi Kuo predicts only the higher-end iPhone models will see faster USB data transfer speeds. Kuo believes only the 2 Pro models will support at least USB 3.2 or Thunderbolt 3 high-speed wired connections, while the 2 standard models iPhone 15/15 Plus would use slower USB 2.0 speeds, the same as Lightning. At least some new models could also support faster 35W charging speeds, although predictably, some might say, you could need a proprietary Apple-made adapter to power up at those rates. Dynamic Island, the display cutout that Apple launched on the iPhone 14 Pro/Pro Max, is expected to carry over to all 4 models in 2023, a replacement for the notch on older full-screen iPhones. Dynamic Island is a floating black pill-shaped section just below the top of the screen. It not only masks the phone's front camera and Face ID sensor, but it can also flash alerts, animations and shortcuts for tasks like driving directions, timers or music. Apple design VP Alan Ditilisa that Dynamic Island can display alerts, notifications, and ongoing operations in real time without seeing the boundary between hardware and software. Stainless steel may go the way of the Lightning port, as the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max are rumored to switch to titanium frames. The material upgrade could make the new Pro lineup stronger, lighter and more premium, as Bloomberg's Mark Gurman described in July. He said the titanium used in high-end Apple Watch models was a test for bringing that material to its highest volume device. Although the phones are expected to keep the same frosted glass back, their corners could be more rounded than in previous models. In addition, Apple may drop the lineup's gold hue for a Titan gray colorway. Thinner bezels are expected to accompany the Pro Series titanium frame. Apple is reportedly developing the iPhone 15 Pro/Pro Max displays with a process called low injection pressure overmolding, or LiPo. First used in Apple Watch Series 7 manufacturing, Gurman reported that the technology could reduce the Pro Series bezels to 1.5 mm, down from the 2.2 mm ones found in current models. The iPhone 15 Pro Series could also have an action button like on the Apple Watch Ultra. The customizable toggle would replace the mute switch on the upper left side of the Pro tier iPhones. Possible uses for the action button based on code uncovered in iOS 17 include launching the camera, lighting the phone's flashlight, activating focus, opening accessibility features, or standing pat with the standard mute function. Sources indicated Apple initially wanted to swap in haptic solid-state ones for the iPhone's physical volume and power buttons, but the company reportedly canceled the feature after encountering unresolved technical issues before mass production. So expect standard volume and power/sleep buttons. The most likely camera upgrade is a new periscope lens exclusive to the iPhone 15 Pro Max or Ultra. It would use a prism to bend or fold light captured by the sensor, leading to an optical zoom of 5x to 6x without making the phone be fire. The iPhone 14 Pro series supports up to 3x optical zoom. One of the surest bets about a new flagship iPhone's features is a faster, next-generation chip. The iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max are rumored to use a 3nm chip, likely called the A17 Bionic. It would provide performance boosts and maybe a longer battery life. Meanwhile, the iPhone 15/15 Plus pair is rumored to repeat what the company did in 2022, recycling last year's high-end chip. That means the iPhone 15/15 Plus would use the A16 Bionic found in the iPhone 14 Pro. If recent years are any indication, the new iPhones would be available for pre-order the Friday after the Apple event, with shipments and general availability kicking off a week later. Although this year's models may be more expensive, Apple Watch Series 9 and Apple Watch Ultra, this could be a minor year for Apple Watch updates. The primary hardware change in the Apple Watch Series 9 is rumored to be an S9 chip, marking the product's first real processor upgrade since 2020. Gurman reported that the S9 will be based on the A15 chip that debuted in Apple's iPhone 13 2021 lineup. The S9's full details aren't known, but it's rumored to move from a 7nm manufacturing process to a denser and more efficient 5nm or 4nm one. Expect performance boosts and perhaps longer battery life. Reports suggest the new Apple Watch will otherwise be a largely ho-hum update, with Gurman saying this year's model won't offer any significant design changes or new features. A pink color option and Bluetooth 5.3 support are possible changes for the new model. Regardless, WatchOS 10, arguably the biggest software update in the wearables history, will likely stand as the biggest advancement for the Apple Watch in 2023. As for the Apple Watch Ultra, it's also expected to receive an incremental second-generation update. In addition to the S9 chip, a new Apple Watch Ultra could add a black titanium case. The current model ships in a natural color, expected to return alongside the darker option. AirPods. You probably want to keep your AirPods expectations in check, as the company's march away from Lightning and towards USB will likely be the only headphone upgrades at this year's Apple event. The company will reportedly launch new versions of the current AirPods models, with charging cases that use USB instead of Lightning serving as the only difference. Rumored changes to the AirPods lineup down the road include body temperature sensors, accessibility features for people with hearing disabilities, and a potential price drop for the entry-level model, but we won't likely see any of that on Tuesday. Software. You can expect the event to bring more details about Apple's first big software updates of 2023: iOS 17, watchOS 10, and possibly iPadOS 17. Apple announced the operating systems at WWDC 2023, and their final versions should become available to the public sometime between the event and the iPhone 15 launch. Following recent years' patterns, macOS Sonoma will likely launch in October, with iPadOS 17 joining if it isn't included alongside iOS 17. A potential October Apple event could consist of new iMac, MacBook Air, and 13-inch MacBook Pro models running the M3 chip. iOS 17 includes a new standby mode, voicemail transcriptions, fast-time video voicemails, contact posters, name drop, and new inline predictive text suggestions, among other additions. Meanwhile, watchOS 10 is arguably the platform's most significant update since the wearable's 2015 launch. The new software changes the Apple Watch's fundamental control scheme. The side button now activates Control Center instead of recent apps or the dock, and twisting the watch's digital crown from the watch face scrolls through a customizable stack of glanceable widgets. You can read more about the upcoming software in Engadget's previews of iOS 17, iPadOS 17, and watchOS 10 coverage. A16 Bionic versus A15 Bionic, what it means for the new iPhone 14. Tom's Guide, News, iPhone. A16 Bionic versus A15 Bionic, what it means for the new iPhone 14. Image credit, Apple. When Apple introduces a new iPhone every fall, you've generally been able to count on the fact that the new phone, whatever the model, is going to feature the company's latest mobile silicon. And given the edge Apple enjoys with its chips over rival phones, picking up any new iPhone means you're getting one of the best phones for performance, whether you grab the tiniest iPhone mini or the mightiest iPhone Pro Max. Naturally, you think an A16 Bionic versus A15 Bionic transition for this fall's handset release would mean the same thing, but that won't be the case with the iPhone 14 launch. For the first time ever, Apple will be using different chips for its different phones. The newer A16 Bionic will power the iPhone 14 Pro models, the 6.1-inch iPhone 14 Pro and the 6.7-inch iPhone 14 Pro Max. The less expensive new iPhones coming this fall, including the iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus, again 6.1- and 6.7-inch respectively, will instead use a variation of the A15 Bionic chip Apple introduced as part of the iPhone 13 release in 2021. It's a big change, and it makes an A16 Bionic versus A15 Bionic comparison more relevant than ever, as knowing the differences might influence which iPhone model you ultimately buy. Recommended videos for you. Put another way, if the A16 Bionic chip in the iPhone 14 Pro is going to give you a big usable performance boost over the less expensive iPhone 14 with the A15 Bionic, that's something you'll want to know. It's worth noting that we don't know everything about the iPhone 14 internals yet, but here's how the A16 Bionic versus A15 Bionic comparison is shaping up with what we know so far, and what it means for the iPhone's 14 models. A16 Bionic, what we know. While there was speculation that the A16 would be built on the same 5nm process as the A15 system-on-chip feature in the iPhone 13 models, we now know that the A16 Bionic will actually be built on a 4nm architecture. If you're thinking about buying the iPhone iOS 16.6.1 update your iPhone now to prevent Pegasus from spying on you. Tom's Guide, News, Security. iOS 16.6.1 update your iPhone now to prevent Pegasus from spying on you. Image credit, Getty Images. If you have one of the best iPhones and it's currently running the latest version of iOS 16.6, update it ASAP. Apple has issued emergency security updates to fix 2 zero-day vulnerabilities in its iPhones, pads and Macs that enabled Pegasus spyware to tap into a victim's device to view, listen to and watch their every move. These new zero-day vulnerabilities were found in the Image I/O and Wallet frameworks, as reported by Bleeping Computer. Security researchers at the University of Washington lab first sounded the alarm last week about hackers using malicious attachments to execute arbitrary code on Apple's smartphones and tablets. The organization, which promptly alerted Apple about the discovery, said it found Kaspersky Mobile Antivirus Review, short on features. Tom's Guide. Tom's Guide verdict: get Byte Defender instead. Kaspersky Mobile Security doesn't offer the same breadth of features as its identically priced competitor, even in the paid version. Pros, Plus, strong malware protection, plus call blocking actually works, plus light system impact, plus inexpensive. Byte Defender Mobile Security Review Tom's Guide. Today's best Byte Defender mobile security deals. Byte Defender Mobile Security Specs. URL protection yes. PUA and malware scanning yes. Ad blocking yes. Remote data wipe yes. SIM card lock no. VPN/unlimited use yes. /premium security plan. Anti-theft yes. Lost phone locator yes. PW manager no. Wi-Fi scanner yes. Call blocking no. Text blocking no. Guest mode no. App advisor for app stores no. App locking yes. Photo vault for sensitive images no. Compatibility Android version /Chromebooks /Wear OS version 5 plus /I/Y. Free version /cost $15 per year. With everything from web browser warnings to some of the most effective malware scanning around. Byte Defender Mobile Security tops off its Android defenses with extra privacy protection, scam protections and guards against unwanted apps being installed. It may not be the fastest at scanning, but Byte Defender Mobile Security can stay half a step ahead of hackers by using a mix of local and cloud-based analysis to find and fix a wide variety of threats while maintaining a minimal effect on the phone's performance. With more than 10 million downloads, it's not as popular as apps from Norton and McAfee. Still, it garnered a 4.7 rating on the Google Play Store. While you can't get unlimited access to Byte Defender as be getting just the mobile security app, it provides nothing short of the best protection at one of the best values in Android security today. Byte Defender Mobile Security Review, Costs and What's Covered. Byte Defender's Android products start with its antivirus-free for Android app, which can provide basic protection for a phone or tablet. It relies primarily on cloud scanning for its malware protection and has been designed to have a minimal impact on performance and battery life. If that's not enough, Byte Defender offers a 14-day trial of its full mobile security app. After the trial, it costs $15 a year, making it one of the least expensive ways to guard an Android device. Using Byte Defender Mobile Security adds website analysis and blocking, scam alerts and account privacy for seeing if your personal information has shown up on the dark web. On the other hand, access to the company's VPN is limited to 200 megabytes per day. Unlimited use costs an extra $30 a year. Recommended videos for you. There are other ways to get the Android mobile security app, starting with Byte Defender's cross-platform packages. The $100 total security plan covers 10 systems: PCs, Macs, Androids and iPhones and iPods, and the $120 family pack covers up to 15 systems. VPN access is limited to 200 megabytes per day. The premium security plan takes this a step further with protection for 10 users and unlimited VPN access for up to 5 users at a time. It costs $160 per year. There's one more possibility. Get a Netgear router that includes the company's Armor security software. In addition to software residing on the router, Armor includes an unlimited license for Byte Defender Total Security. After the initial trial period, it costs $100 a year to renew Armor, making it one of the best deals in security software. All of Byte Defender's subscriptions lack one thing: full identity packages that Norton offers with its LifeLock add-ons. Byte Defender's digital identity protection plan is a step in the right direction and costs an extra $80. It can search the dark web for your personal information but lacks ID insurance and lost funds restoration. The mobile security app needs Android version 5 Aqua Lollipop or newer and can protect many but not all Chromebooks as if they were Android systems. Byte Defender Mobile Security is the rare Android security app that focuses on Wear OS Watch S with Wearin, which in addition to malware protection can sound an alarm if the phone and watch are separated by more than 25 feet. Byte Defender's mobile security for iOS is more rudimentary than the Android version. Particularly because of Apple's restrictions on malware scanning, the app does keep an eye on data flowing to and from a device for threats. It includes website protection, limited VPN access and costs the same $15 a year. Byte Defender Mobile Security Review, Malware Protection. With everything from website protection to defenses against phishing and malware, Byte Defender Mobile Security is a one-stop Android safety center. Based on its autopilot technology, all major details are left to the app to tune the phone's security stance, often reacting faster than any person could to new threats. By pushing much of the analysis and recognition of malware into the cloud, the scanner can track the latest threats while keeping the app slim with low overhead. In addition to stopping unwanted apps from being installed, Byte Defender Mobile Security scans for rogue code in real time. The app can't schedule scans, but it can be set to manually examine a system for viruses and provides excellent feedback on its operations with a list of major malware categories and whether you've picked up any of those infections. The classifications range from malware, ransomware, and potentially unwanted apps to adware, monitoring. About Tom's Guide. Tom's Guide. Reference. About Tom's Guide. Image credit Josh Matthews / Tom's Guide. Tom's Guide is your knowledgeable, best friend who's always on call to answer your questions. From phones to TVs, appliances to electric scooters, gaming gear or fitness equipment, we've tested out all the latest products to help inform your buying decisions. We also work hard to surface the best deals on the latest products to help you save money along the way. We're also here to help you get the most out of your purchases through tips, tricks, and how-tos, and to solve your problems as they arise. Apart from product reviews, Tom's Guide is here to help keep you entertained with the best shows to watch on all the major streaming services. Tom's Guide was launched in 2007 by Bistoff Media, which was subsequently acquired by Tech Media Network in 2013. In 2014, Tech Media Network changed its name to Perch, which was acquired by Future in 2018. Our mission: buy the right gear. Whether it's the best phone, best TV, best air fryer, or best exercise bike, we spend thousands of hours testing the products in our buying guides to let our readers know what the best products are for all types of use cases and budgets. We also extensively compare top products against each other, and inform readers of the latest news and rumors about the latest devices and the next big thing, so that our audience is equipped with the most information before they make a decision. Save money. We help our readers save money by providing them with extensive deals coverage on popular items throughout the year, whether it's the best TV deals or best Apple Watch deals. We can also help you where to find 5 restock. We're also here to help on the holidays as well as events such as Black Friday. In addition, we provide advice on whether it's worth upgrading to a newer device, how to save money when cutting the cord, and personal finance tips to help people maximize their budget, know what to watch and what to play. Our comprehensive guides and stories inform our audience of the best new shows coming to all the major streaming services, from Netflix to HBO Max to Hulu. We look at what's popular with audiences and critics, so you don't have to waste your free hours on a dud. Our gaming coverage also looks at the latest titles, and we play all the new hits to give you our unbiased opinion of whether it's worth your time. Live better. Our rapidly expanding homes and fitness sections are not only populated with the latest reviews of appliances and fitness gear, but are packed
From the CISO series, it's Cybersecurity Headlines.
It's Monday, September 4th, 2023. X to collect member employment data. The application, formerly known as Twitter, is now offering a new service to its X Premium members, the collection of a selfie photo and employment and educational history with consent. According to the X Privacy Policy Update, this is to, quote, recommend potential jobs for you to share with potential employers when you apply for a job, end quote. This may indicate a desire on the part of X to move into territory largely dominated by LinkedIn, especially in light of its purchase last May of a tech recruiting service called Lasky. Technical details of sandworm malware Infamous Chisel released. Security agencies from the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, that's the US, the UK, New Zealand, Canada and Australia, have released technical information of malware named Infamous Chisel, used by the Russian hacking group Sandworm as part of the war effort against Ukraine. The malware focuses on Android devices used by members of the Ukrainian military and was designed to collect intelligence. Largely searching for files with .jpeg or .txt extensions, Infamous Chisel is considered in the report as, quote, low to medium sophistication, giving little thought to avoiding detection, end quote. However, Cyberscoop points out that since many Android devices do not have a host-based detection system, there are few ways to monitor the Android devices for malicious behavior. Golf club maker Callaway suffers breach. The breach occurred about 1 month ago, and golf equipment maker Topgolf Callaway says this resulted in the personal and account data of more than 1 million customers being exposed, including account passwords and answers to security questions. The notice also specifies that, quote, no payment card information, government ID or social security numbers were exposed, end quote. Customers are now being redirected to a reset password page. No mention of a cause has been made public other than describing the event as a, quote, IT incident, end quote. The company has stated that additional security measures are being put in place to prevent a reoccurrence. Windows WordPad to be retired after 28 years. WordPad, a word processing app that sat somewhere between the Microsoft Word and Notepad on the Windows platform, quote, is no longer being updated and will be removed in a future release of Windows, end quote. This per a Microsoft deprecated features announcement made Friday. Bleeping Computer adds that, quote, while not tagged by Redmond as the reason for discontinuing WordPad, earlier this year the Qbot malware operation also started infecting computers and evading detection by abusing a DLL hijacking flaw in the Windows 10 WordPad app, end quote. And now a word from our sponsor, Comcast. Data is the currency of the 21st century, yet for so many cybersecurity professionals, it's still too difficult to access, correlate, and use this currency for better, faster security and compliance decision-making. That's why Comcast Technology Solutions created DataBee, a cloud-native security data fabric platform that can help you turn your security data into valuable business currency. You can learn more at Comcast/DataBee, that is comca.st/databee, DATABEE. Look also for a link on our show notes page at the Comcast sponsor site. NIST publishes a new draft of cybersecurity and privacy learning program. As an update to the 2003 version, this document intends to provide guidance on, quote, building a cybersecurity and privacy learning program, end quote. Included within the goals of this update are, quote, to integrate privacy with cybersecurity in the development of organization-wide learning programs, end quote, and also, quote, to introduce a life cycle model that allows for ongoing iterative improvements and changes to accommodate cybersecurity, privacy, and organization-specific events, end quote. A public comment period is open until October 27th of this year. Children's online safety laws blocked in Texas and Arkansas. 2 federal judges have granted preliminary injunctions blocking the passage of 2 child safety laws. The Social Media Safety Act is an Arkansas law that would prevent children from creating accounts on large social media apps without parental permission. And the Texas law is intended to keep children from, quote, accessing content that is made for adults, end quote. According to The Record, quote, the tech industry trade group NetChoice, which represents Google, Meta, and TikTok, among others, sued in June to block the law on the grounds that it is unconstitutional and would place an onerous burden on digital platforms, end quote. In his ruling, U.S. District Judge Timothy Brooks stated that the law as placed was, quote, not targeted to address the harms it has identified, end quote, and he also suggests that age gating is not effective and that the law, quote, ignores experts' views that parental oversight is what is really needed to insulate children from potential harms that lurk on the internet, end quote. Companies using software to track remote workers. An article in Business Insider highlights how certain companies are using keystroke monitoring software to track remote workers' time on the keyboard, resulting in dismissals when a required number of keystrokes per hour is not achieved. Named in the story are large companies like JP Morgan and Tesla. The story also quotes an earlier New York Times story that showed that 8 of the 10 largest U.S. private companies track their employees' productivity. This story also refers to a Business Insider article from October 2022, which points out that, quote, not turning your webcam on for a work meeting may get people fired with little chance of winning a wrongful termination claim, end quote. And now, last week in ransomware. The Chambersburg Area School District in southern Pennsylvania announced last week that it would stay open despite an attack that is yet to be confirmed as ransomware, and similarly, the University of Michigan says it has restored its systems following an attack last weekend. Clothing retailer Forever 21 has filed reports of a breach that affected current and former employees, but has not confirmed whether ransomware was involved. We also reported last week on breaches, again, not necessarily ransomware, affecting a French government employment agency, the offices of Montreal's electrical infrastructure, and movie giant Paramount. Remember, we're hosting a meetup in Arlington, Virginia next Friday, September the 8th. It's happening at the Bronson Beer Hall from 5 to 7 p.m., so stop by and say hi after work. We would love to see you there. For more information, click on our events page over at cisoseries.com. And have you ever wanted to hear what goes on when a CISO talks to a vendor? Well, that is why we created Capture the CISO. It's a unique competition show where CISOs watch vendor demos and you get to hear what questions they have. And it's hosted by our own Rich Struffolino. All of our competitors are sponsors, so if you are interested in learning more, contact us at info@cisoseries.com. I'm Steve Prentice, reporting.
From the CISO series, it's Cybersecurity Headlines.
How Chinese hackers stole a Microsoft sign-in key, companies using software to track remote workers, and is Mudge now a G-Man? These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have been bringing to you on this week's Cybersecurity Headlines. And now we get a chance for some insight, opinion, and expertise on these stories and more from our return guest, Dan Walsh, the CISO at Village MD, making his annual visit to the show. Dan, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course, we want to thank someone who also kind of knows the ropes. I think that's you considered to
an eye on it, and I think SSO solution isn't much different. There's a lot of access and a lot of settings and configurations that need to be properly set in order to avoid this. And then certainly, like, the human element is make sure that you're training your IT super admins. You're doing tabletop type scenarios to try to make sure that they are, following best practices.
Yeah, and Dan, I love that it's not just a, hey, we need to drill these administrators more, that's definitely part of the solution, but that that can't, I feel like all too often we hear, oh, if only these humans, and it really has to be a systemic issue, I think. So I appreciate your perspective on that. Next up here, Lockbit leaks documents swiped from UK defense contractor. Last month, British perimeter security company Zound Limited was breached by the notorious Lockbit Group. In its public breach disclosure on September 1st, Zound Limited indicated that Lockbit had breached a PC used to control one of its manufacturing machines. Here's the kicker, though. The PC was running Windows 7, support for which concluded for general support in 2020, and then they had extended security updates ending in January 2023. So either way you spin it, it is out of support. As a result of the attack, Lockbit appears to have leaked sensitive documents relating to the physical security of agencies in the UK Ministry of Defence. So let's just review that for a second. Windows 7, Ministry of Defense. I guess, is there a lesson people should take from this other than let's move on from Windows 7?
Well, so as a third party to the UK Ministry of Defense, and I think it goes back to vendor management. I think it goes back to making sure that you've got a good relationship with your vendors and that they are, this is a pretty big mess. I don't know how it works in the UK, but I know that there's a certain amount of scrutiny that is applied and should be applied. And so not quite sure how this one kind of squeaked through, but yeah, that's pretty bad. Windows 7 is definitely not a good look.
Yeah. I mean, I not to make any excuse, especially when it's any way connected to a defense department or something like that. I know in manufacturing there for a while, right? I mean, that is an area rife with legacy infrastructure, for lack of a better term, across a wide variety of tooling and machining and stuff like that. But, we're living in an age where everything is connected, and especially when there's any kind of national defense kind of implications there, that does seem a little inexcusable, right?
Well, and exactly, and it's not that the issue isn't that you're running Windows 7; it's that you had no mitigating or compensating measures to support that if there was truly some sort of dependency issue that you needed to continue to run Windows 7.
All right, well, before we move on to our next story, I wanted to just give a quick shout out to everybody watching in the live stream, checking us out on LinkedIn, everywhere else on YouTube. We got Paul Daniel, we got Gary Longsign, and we got some other LinkedIn users that are choosing to keep their names to themselves. We appreciate your anonymity. We're not going to out you. Appreciate everybody giving their feedback and letting us know what they're thinking as they're watching. And we're going to move on to our next story here. Another one that piqued my interest for sure. This is Brian Krebs on the cracked LastPass keys. Krebs reported that the rash of cracked crypto wallets indicates that threat actors have begun successfully cracking stolen LastPass keys. This follows the breach at LastPass last November, and this damage is because users all seemingly stored their private key seed phrase in LastPass. Of course, like many password managers, LastPass allows people to not just save passwords, but you can save all sorts of stuff, including notes. And it seems that people did just that with that seed phrase. It's easy to say, keep your seed phrase separate, or maybe in, a lockbox in a bank or something like that. But people don't seem to hear that kind of warning. Dan, is there more that can be done with this kind of with this kind of story here?
I mean, I'm sure there's probably some product enhancement that could be made in some of these, password wallets, but I don't know that, really it's really anything more that can be done. So I think that, just reinforcing that, hey, this is something that we really need to stay away from is important.
Yeah, and I think as much as a security community, we've kind of over the years pointed on a consumer level to things like password managers as a good solution to kind of a flawed system. The LastPass breach in particular, but kind of some of the other stuff we've seen around password managers of late, has gotten me more and more thinking like this is just another example of, setting up a wall that cannot be breached. And then when it inevitably is breached in some way, whether it's a situation like LastPass, which is, a whole kind of different mess, or it's just your own individual master password key, it does get me thinking like anytime we're setting up a system where we're setting up the impenetrable wall that can't be breached, that always seems like that is a flawed system in and of itself, right?
Yeah. And of course, I think there's a comment here that the association with crypto was also very damaging, right?
Yeah. And
so maybe, perhaps there's an opportunity for some of these password managers to maybe do some better, customer or consumer outreach on like, hey, here's a real risk. You really need to keep that separate.
Absolutely. Yep. All right. Well, our last story here, connected cars, turns out not great for privacy and security. A recent report on connected cars from Mozilla gave all 25 brands in the report a failing grade on security and privacy. Mozilla noted that privacy policies from these cars inform customers that companies can collect health and genetic information, immigration status, facial expressions, locations, and in some instances, sexual activity. Looking at you, Nissan. This includes data collected from telematics systems and sensors in the cars, but also extends to things like mobile apps and even dealership visits. Over half the brands said that they can share information with law enforcement, while 76% gave themselves the right to sell personal data to third parties. Dan, the great thing about today's cars is that they're basically computers on wheels, and the bad thing about today's cars is that they're basically computers on wheels. Not only is data, obviously, this could be a target. This is something that's collecting data, but who among us wants to read the fine print when we're getting the keys to our new car? I'm curious your thoughts here.
So the interesting thing to me about this story, like there's a whole privacy aspect of it. And in the US, we don't have a comprehensive privacy law like a GDPR. So I think that's one thing that we're going to have to figure out as a country. And then around the world, because I know we have international folks that listen into the show, but they are at varying phases of figuring that out. I think the other issue is as we move towards self-driving vehicles, we're going to run into this intersection of these cars are not secure. Like they are easily hackable because they were designed for function, not necessarily and for security. In the same way, like some of the old SCADA systems in our energy grid were developed, and so we're gonna have to catch up because you don't want a self-driving car that could be hacked very easily. We don't want this data that could be used to social engineer somebody or steal their identity. Right? Could all be ascertained via these automobiles in a way that the designers of the car companies never fathomed. So it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves over time. But yeah, this is definitely not a great look. And so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and shout out to Kevin Farrell over on LinkedIn saying, leaving your car unlocked, also not great for privacy and security. That's the old classic security kerfuffle with cars, Kevin. So I appreciate you pointing that out. And then, James Driscoll, I don't know how they're detecting the sexual activity. I'm assuming that was lawyer copy-paste error from some other... Whenever I see something crazy like that, I always assume that is lazy lawyers, not any weirdness on the part of the company. But I don't know. I don't want to think about what telematics systems that.
Well, hey, listen, listen. OnStar for General Motors, as an example, can listen to you, right? And I think a lot of them can. So I don't know if there's some way that some machine learning listens in and determines what the situation is given. Yeah. I have no idea, and I don't want to know. Maybe.
Yes. And CCL over on YouTube was saying, monkey123 as your password. I don't think any password manager. Well, I don't know. Like if you had two-factor, that's not the worst. A bad password and two-factor is better than just a bad password. So if your password manager supports two-factor, I think you're in a better shape than just having monkey123, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I just broke Dan's security sense if I will not endorse monkey123 as a password. All right, Dan, before we put you in another impossible password approval situation, was there any story here that was a thumbs up or an eye roller for you, a favorite story that stood out for you today?
I like I think I really like the help desk, the Okta story. I think it's going to be something that, in a sense, like the LastPass story, right, where they're going to go after where all the value's at, and then there will be follow-on implications of that, follow-on loss, and so I think it goes back to just I mean, not to plug Okta, but I think it's a solid solution, and so. If they can be vulnerable to something like this and people that use their product, then I think it's important that, it always has to go back to the basics. So you can have the, very sophisticated tool. And if you're not implementing it the right way, same thing that we see in cloud infrastructure, right? Cloud infrastructure is great technology, but if you don't configure it and maintain it properly, you're going to have problems. So I think it's just the same old story around that.
All right. Well, Dan, thank you so much for being on the show. Dan Walsh, the CISO at VillageMD, making I'm going to say a triumphant return to the Week in Review show. Thank you so much. Where can people find you on the cyberspace? And the big question, are you hiring?
Yep. So find me on LinkedIn, Dan Walsh CISO. And then we are hiring at VillageMD. Right now, we have one GRC analyst position open. So if you are interested in that, please go to the careers page and apply.
Thank you, Dan. Fantastic as always. We'll have to have you on. Maybe we'll even do it twice a year. Who knows? We'll see how schedules align, much like the stars. And thanks also to our sponsor, Comcast DataBee, a security, risk, and compliance data fabric platform. Also, thanks to all of our commenters today. We had a little bit of a lively chat here today. Love it. Love to see it. Let's keep it going every single week. We can't get all of these up on the screen, but we truly appreciate your time being here. So CCL, James Driscoll, Kevin Farrell, DePaul Daniel, everybody for participating live. We love to see it. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Week in Review show, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, and adjust your time zone if I didn't list yours. In the meantime, you can get your daily news fix through cybersecurity headlines. Every single day, give us about 6 minutes, and we will get you all caught up. Until the next time we
Hello and welcome to the Friday, September 8th, 2023 edition of the SANS and Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich and today I'm recording from London, England. Apple today released updates for macOS, iOS, iPadOS, as well as watchOS, fixing two vulnerabilities, both of which are already exploited in the wild. The first one, CVE 2023-41061, interestingly, a validation issue in the wallet framework. It could be exploited via a crafted attachment and lead to arbitrary code execution. The second vulnerability is affecting the image IO framework. It's a buffer overflow, also leading to a code execution. The image IO vulnerability, according to the Apple announcement, was discovered by the Citizen Lab at the University of Toronto. The Citizen Lab has in the past discovered similar vulnerabilities that were usually then linked to commercial spyware being used by governments to spy on activists. At this point, I don't see any details about this vulnerability on the Citizen Lab website. And sticking with Apple here for another story, I ran into some, well, not sure if I should call it scareware or fleeceware earlier today. The way it was advertised was by tagging users on Facebook. And then, of course, these users' friends will also see the respective messages. It was a fairly deceptive message, really sort of just clickbait, saying that, well, someone has passed away. The link then led to your standard scareware page, basically claiming that you are infected with malware. The software itself was essentially a VPN product for iOS, and interestingly, it was in the App Store, so it did pass Apple's review. I did install it briefly